Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Automating Your Mobile Testing. My name is Brian White. I'm a Senior Technical Engineer here at Checkpoint Technologies, and I will be your moderator today. Joining me today are our presenters, Dean Carvin and Jamie Moore. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves? Well, we'll start with you, Dean.
All right, Brian, thank you. So, like Brian said, my name is Dean Carvin. I'm the Director of Professional Services here at Checkpoint Technologies. And I've been with Checkpoint for a number of years now. First started as a consultant working exclusively with Checkpoint Technologies. I just liked how they did business. So formed that relationship, then came on a couple years ago full-time. So I started in automation, quality assurance automation back about 16 years ago. Started with Windrunner back in the day of Mercury and Test Director, and now Quick Test Pro, UFT, some Load Runner, and then the ALM Quality Center as well. So love the world of test automation, and love helping companies getting up and running, be as efficient as possible in their testing. So that's me in a nutshell. Jamie?
Hey, thanks, Dean and Brian. My name is Jamie Moore. I'm a Senior Solution Architect with Mobile Labs. I've been in the software testing industry for probably longer than I want to admit, but I started back with Mercury Interactive. Even before they had Windrunner, their flagship product was called XRunner. So I've been in the software industry for a long time. So not only did I work with Mercury Interactive, I also spent a number of years with IBM in the rational software quality area with those products. And then with the whole mobile application testing industry exploded, I wanted to get into that. So I've been with Mobile Labs for over a year now. I just love the mobile testing space. It's dynamic, it's growing, and there's a lot of things going on. And I'm happy to be presenting with one of our premier partners, Checkpoint Technologies, today, and thanks everyone for joining. Brian?
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, well, let's start off with a little bit about Checkpoint Technologies. We were incorporated in 2003, and our headquarters is located here in beautiful, sunny Tampa, Florida. Our area of expertise is around quality assurance and quality control, specifically in the areas of functional performance and application security testing. We are, I'm happy to say, HPE Gold partners, as well as authorized software support partners and HPE certified training partners. And I'm proud to say that we are also partners with Mobile Labs, Zephyr, and Turnkey Solutions. And we are also affiliated with QAI Worldwide. QAI stands for Quality Assurance Institute, in case you weren't familiar. And if you ever need training on subjects like the essentials in software testing or boot camp for business analysts, we can certainly provide that to you right here in our Tampa Training Center. A little bit about our services as well. As far as services, we provide services to companies all around the United States, including staff augmentation. So if you need some strong testing resources to be part of your team, long or short term, whether on-site or remote, we can provide that. We also provide consulting, so anything from handling upgrades, installation configuration, customization for different solutions. We also have our version of offshoring. Some of you might have heard it called nearshoring. And what we do is we can house a team for you right here in our 7,800 square foot headquarters in Tampa, Florida. And of course, we also provide education services, structured classroom training or tailored mentoring, where we can go on site to your environment. We can work with your team to educate them and work in your solution so that you get real work done and have artifacts when we leave. And of course, Mobile Labs, as I said, we are partners, proud to say partners with Mobile Labs. They are a full-service mobile application testing solution, and they test on real mobile devices as opposed to simulators, so that can give you more confidence in your testing. And you can execute manual, automated, or performance testing right there with Mobile Labs. And a little bit of housekeeping about our webinar today. this live webinar, we're recording it, and you will all registrants will get a copy of this recording in about a day. Also, during the Q&A session, please type all of your questions into the webinar control panel at any time, and we will take a look at those. In case you weren't familiar, this is the control panel, and you just type your questions in there. And please be aware that if we want to respect your time, we know that everybody's busy, and if we're unable to answer all the questions we get today, we will get answers to all the registrants in about a week. And then, of course, just a reminder, here are some key takeaways that you should be getting from this webinar. So you're going to look at some strategies for automating your mobile app testing, of course, and then you're going to get to learn how to use UFT as well as Appium for the Mobile Labs deviceConnect. And then we'll be doing some information on how those connect and interact, and you should get to some real solid information on how to go ahead and do that. So before I pass the presentation off to Dean, I thought it would be interesting to do a quick poll and see where everybody's at in terms of your organization's current standings with your mobile testing. So when you see the poll questions, you're going to see the different descriptions: very mature, fairly mature, immature, non-existent. And just to give you an idea, very mature would mean using manual, automated, and performance testing with solid tools and techniques. Fairly mature means mostly manual with little or no automation, and you need better tools, better techniques. Immature, we need to test mobile devices and have attempted with limited success. And non-existent, what's mobile testing? So yeah, if you could go ahead and just throw the answers to your questions. Where is your organization in terms of your mobile application testing? That would be great. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we have so we finished up the poll. So some interesting results. 0% of our attendees said that they were very mature. 47% said fairly mature. 42% said immature. 11% said non-existent. Dean, I'm going to hand it off to you to talk about your thoughts on the results of the poll and to kick off the presentation. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, Brian, thanks. Appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for replying. It's not a really big surprise. I'm kind of surprised there's no one with a very mature environment. Mobile testing and some of these tools that we're going to talk about today have been out for a little while. And but it has taken some time for organizations to apply tools and proper QA techniques to the mobile space. So yeah, 0%. I guess that's why we're here. There's a lot of growth potential, and we hope to get you guys there. So any thoughts around that, Jamie?
Yeah, I concur, Dean. I mean, mobile application testing is difficult because you need to test on real devices, and getting real devices integrated in with your infrastructure so that you can easily put applications on there, run automated testing on there. It's a challenge for a lot of organizations, and we see that with these poll results that we just saw.
Exactly. It can be a daunting task, and organizations with experience, and I'm kind of more focusing on the automation side since that's what the focus is of our webinar. But applying some of those standards and some of those techniques to mobile, it is just a little quirky sometimes, less stable. Some of the environments that we work in with the mobile side. So yeah, it's more challenging, and that's why, like you said, Jamie, you enjoy it because it is very challenging and it's moving quickly, and maturing fast. So let's go into the presentation. The first thing we're going to do is talk and just kind of give you an update or kind of overview of what Mobile Labs is. If you haven't seen Mobile Labs at a conference, a lot of the software testing conferences, Mobile Labs will have a cart there and a presentation to physically show you what it can do for you. But so just kind of giving an overview, deviceConnect It's kind of both the cart, is the deviceConnect cart, and the software. So the cart you can see there, it's a fantastic physical solution to a physical problem, which is what do we do with all these devices that we need to test with? A lot of organizations just, some of them bring your own device policy and we'll test on it, or some of them buy some, but then you have to sign them out, sign them in, they get lost. It can be a nightmare. There's a fantastic solution that's a lockable cart. It fits just about anywhere you need it to go in someone's office or in a lab back in a corner, easily accessible. On the software side, it uses deviceConnect, which is what it is, a private mobile device cloud. Enables anyone in your organization to securely access your devices, whether they're in your office or somewhere around the world. And we're not going to get into deviceConnect and all the features, but that's great to look into at some point. But you can actually schedule devices too for your testing. So fantastic solution. For this webinar, we're going to focus on the Mobile Labs Trust. And what that is an HP certified UFT add-in. And it extends UFT to mobile devices to be able to test real mobile devices. And what we'll see is we'll do a bit of a deep dive into UFT and Mobile Trust and show you where the value comes and how it leverages the object model and adds object classes to UFT to work with. So the Trust add-in utilizes UFT's object model. What that means is essentially is it uses properties to identify objects and methods to interact with those objects. So the properties and values of those properties allow UFT to recognize objects on your mobile device based on the background, based on what they are. What's the name of the object? What's the text of the object? Whatever it happens to be. All right. So instead of having to use visual identifiers as a default or mapping lines around objects to focus on objects, it uses the properties to uniquely identify objects on the application. So what that means is it's much more stable. So you know that applications, objects can move around, they can change their look and feel, and they can also change some of the properties too, but the properties themselves are more stable than how it looks and where it is on the application. So it allows your scripting to be much more robust. The scripts you develop with UFT and the Trust add-in can be used in performance testing and monitoring as well. And we'll see in a bit how simply adding a couple lines, a couple steps in your script, you can leverage your UFT script with LoadRunner. And it'll collect those metrics and report via LoadRunner. Any knowledge, any expertise you have in quick test or UFT can be leveraged utilizing the Trust add-in. So there's nothing really changes inside UFT. It just extends it to mobile. Okay. And of course, via QC and ALM integrations, UFT connects to ALM, so all your mobile scripts using the Trust add-in can be saved into ALM. The scripts can be associated with requirements. The scripts run, they can pass and fail the requirements. So you use the entire ALM model. All right, I'm trying to move the slide forward. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. So because it uses the object model, and again, no kind of a text recognition or image recognition, it's much more robust. Properties are automatically retrieved and added to the object. So we'll look in a minute how you can use the object spy to spy on the objects, add them to the repository, object repository that's embedded into UFT, just like you use a web application, UFT against the web application. So there's also a drag and drop that you can utilize with UFT. So you learn the objects in the object repository. You drag and drop them into your script to very quickly build a script within UFT. And because of those property recognition, you know if an object is a button, is it a link, is it an image, is it simply an element, which is kind of a generic object, is it a list or a grid, things like that. You can also very easily see, is it enabled, disabled, is it in focus, is it visible or not. So all those things you're commonly aware of in UFT are accessible with the Trust add-in as well. And here's an example. Okay, so this is an image of the object spy, spying on an object in an application. So we can see here that the object spy shows the properties associated with the object that it's spied on. So the whole list of properties and values that can be utilized, one, for object recognition. All right, so we're not going to get into UFT training, but you use the static properties for object recognition, and some of those dynamic properties, the item selected in the list or what value is set as the text in a text object. Those properties can be retrieved during runtime for verification purposes as well. Also as an object enabled, disabled, things like that. So you can see it also, it not only has access to the object you're interacting with, which in this case is a button, but you can actually access any objects in the whole parent above that as well, the different parents. So if there's a table in there that some objects are embedded in, you can interact with that table as well, get some information from that. So if anyone's familiar with UFT, working on a web environment, you've probably done things like that. So very, very simple and easy to use. So first of all, Brian, thank you for posing for this shot. We appreciate the arm there. Kind of shows us what we're doing here. We're looking at power functions.
Been hitting the gym.
Laughing, but that is your arm. We know that, so I appreciate that. So utilizing the object model, we have methods that you're commonly familiar with in UFT. So things like set and select and click. There's also get RO property, which is simply get a property from the object during runtime. You get the text or the selected or enable, disabled value, things like that. So instead of having to develop custom functions to interact with mobile objects and extract all that information, simple method calls will do that for you. So again, if you're familiar with UFT, using the Trust add-in is seamless. So as far as cross-platform scripting, we all know that we can't just focus on Android devices. You have to support just about everything out there, which is a daunting task, and that's another webinar in and of itself. But in this case, we're just showing an Apple device and an Android device. And in this case, the username field is recognized by UFT differently as far as the properties go from one device to another. Well, how do we render that situation? We can do one of two things. We could learn both objects and branch our code based on it. If we're running on iOS, then use this step. If we're otherwise running on Android, use this step. Well, we can see by using what's called visual relation identifier within UFT, you can actually recognize the objects exactly the same for both types of devices. So by utilizing the common username label, you can tell UFT learn the username label, and that label is to the left of the object we want to interact with, which in this case is the edit field username. All right. So by learning an object using visual relation identifier, it allows you to have one step, as you see above there, iOS and Android. It's one step that does the same thing no matter what device, what operating system you're running on. All right. Again, very quick to create your scripts, minimizing logic and complexity and the number of objects you have in the object repository you have to interact with. Your scripting is quicker and your maintenance is lighter, and that is certainly the goal.
Hey, Dean.
All right. Yes.
Dean? Yeah, we just got a question that might be related to this slide, so I thought that I would throw it out to you. Can we use inside objects with Mobile Labs?
Yes, we can use Insight, and so this is from somebody who obviously has been using UFT for a while, but Insight objects allow you to identify an object based on the visual components, what it looks like on the screen. All right, so it's kind of a last resort, really. So this is typically used for an object that tends to be really dynamic in nature as far as the properties that's being utilized to build the object in the background. So if the object kind of looks very unique on the page, you can use that method to kind of draw a line around, draw a box around to say, here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like. Every time we come to this, it doesn't change, but I need to be able to click this image. And so yes, you can use that with the Trust add-in as well. So thank you for that question. So when it comes to the kind of the ALM landscape, you have UFT and Sprinter, which is helping you on your manual testing side. API testing, service virtualization. There's also network virtualization, which we won't get into either. But within the whole ALM landscape, Trust fits right in there with UFT and leverages the strong capabilities of the HP platform of tools for your agile delivery solution. So, you know, agile is certainly the rage. It's not going anywhere. It's those companies. We're working with a number of companies who have been resistant to agile, but realize that they're falling behind in the marketplace, and they're realizing automation is the key. So, when it comes to merging agile development and testing methodology with mobile testing, Mobile Labs with the Trust add-in UFT are priceless to get you where you need to be in the competitive market. Trying to advance a slide. There we go. Sorry about that. So when it comes to performance testing, that's a lot of organizations need to do this as well, because we know that our customers are very finicky, very impatient when it comes to mobile applications, mobile browsers. So performance testing makes sure the user, from the user perspective, it's performing properly. You can insert a couple commands and then leverage your UFT script using the Trust add-in with LoadRunner. All right, so there's a simple command called start transaction and end transaction. What that simply does is measure the time it takes for those processes to run, or those steps to run between the start and end transaction. And then the test results will show. We'll show an example of that during the demo. So from the LoadRunner side, you would need a GUI. I believe it's called a GUI test protocol to do this. But then you could actually load the UFT script into LoadRunner. It runs the UFT script against your application, and utilizing those start and end transactions, it can measure the response times between those transactions. You can add multiple ones in UFT as well. They're just keyed based on the name of that transaction. So the start transaction, end transaction with the same name, there's the measurement. They can overlap and be pretty interesting to do. But so running from LoadRunner, you can leverage all the tools that are embedded in the LoadRunner. This isn't a LoadRunner webinar, but for those of you who are familiar with it, it's incredibly robust, very powerful, and in many instances, it's easier to develop a script, a scenario with UFT than with LoadRunner. And if that's the case, and you already have a functional test UFT, instead of recreating that in LoadRunner, you can actually just leverage that existing functional test inside LoadRunner and collect the metrics that you need to collect. All right, so let's do this. Let's run through a demo of UFT and using the Trust add-in. So what you see on the right-hand side here is a Android device that was already opened from Mobile Labs deviceConnect. I'm not going to go through that process just for sake of time. So what we can do here is I'm just going to bring up the object SPY in UFT and just take a look at some of these objects here. All right, so we have a mobile element, we have an edit field here. So we can see that it's enabled. We can see all the properties associated with it. There's no text in here, but as soon as I say put an S and maybe an A, SPY on it again, we see that that becomes a property of that object. So during runtime, we can extract that value or that text property and compare it to something. So let's SPY on a couple other things here. One thing we also have is a mobile list, MOBI list. And again, it shows the properties. It also, one of the interesting properties it pulls out was something called items count. So using a little bit of VB script, you can actually pull out the items count, go through each item in there, maybe verify that these items are what you expect them to be after putting an S and an A in the field. So things like that you can do. And then from here, of course, you can add it to the object repository. Okay. So let's actually, let me just clear this out here. If it doesn't freeze. So what we're going to do is take a look at a little script here that was developed. And why do I have a little dot here? I have to reopen it. But as you can see, if you're familiar with UFT, this is very similar to what a UFT script looks like from the editor, expert view, basically. And this is just a simple technique. If you're wondering, it's not a set. It's simply if you have a field where every character pings the database for a response, then you just have to put one character in at a time. It looks like the app froze. So what I'm going to do is just close this and reopen it. Let me see. Maybe I just had it open too long. All right, let's just do this real quick. Just take a second here. So from here, I'm going to connect to HTC device. I'm going to launch via the Mobile Labs Trust. Click on FlightAware. This is an application. If you travel a lot, it's a great application to have just to kind of check on your flight, check on the history of that flight. How often is it late? How dependable is it? Yes.
I was wondering, while we do this, I wondered if there was, if this was a good chance or a good opportunity to ask another question.
Go for it, yes.
Okay, so this could be for either you or for Jamie or both of you. Is there any difference in ability to measure quality between using emulators versus physical devices? And that could be you or Jamie, if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Well, this is Jamie. I'll tackle that one. Our core philosophy is you need to test on a real device for a number of reasons. One, emulators, I mean, they can replicate a battery, they can replicate some things, but that's not the physical device that's going to be running your application and how it responds under different circumstances. A couple of things that we kind of talk about when we go into trade shows and whatnot is, first off, there's not one of your end users or customers that's going to run your application on an emulator. So that's one thing. So you just need to, to get the whole true behavior, you need to test on a real device.
I wholeheartedly agree, absolutely. And there's a lot of simulators and emulators for sale out there. They're pretty dang expensive, but it's highly recommended you actually somehow secure and manage physical devices for your testing. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to give it a run. It's a demo, no guarantees. Either way, we'll take a look at the test results and show you what the test results give us in the back end there. So it's going to put in Southwest Air, a flight number. It's going to verify that flights exist here, show up, and then it's going to click on one of them and actually found another one. I'm just going to do this manually real quick and we'll run it again. But so then the next thing it's going to do is pull those flight speed, the filed speed, filed altitude, and duration and write it back to test results. But I think there's a performance issue is probably what it is. I'm on Wi-Fi with our browser, with everything running here. It's a little tricky. So let me just try that one more time. Give this a whirl. So there are no techniques here that I use that are different from using UFT for, say, a web application and things like that. It's all standard. That's weird. It is a performance issue. Too many things going on at one time. All right, so let's take a look at this result here. So we confirmed the flights, and then there was an error with a text or something in here. You just pull this down. I'm going to run it from that spot. And these objects, the flight speed, altitude, and duration, are actually recognized. Yeah, I should have just restarted. Sorry, y'all. See, that's what demos do. You just never know what's going to happen. But these are recognized, if it would behave for me, using the flight speed, and it pulls off the value next to it. Flight altitude pulls off the value next to it. And then we have the test results. And then inside there as well is the start transaction and the end transaction. But unfortunately, it worked forever until just now, which is typical of a demo, right? So that's using UFT and the Trust browser. So just to show you what's in the background here real quick. So you just see it, all it is Mobile Labs Trust. There's no other web or .NET or anything else related to other technologies. It's simply Mobile Labs Trust. Gives us access to the Mobi elements and Mobi type classes of objects. So with that, any questions on this? If not, we'll move on to the Appium side. Yeah.
Great.
And
Okay. Well, thanks,
we'll let
Dean.
Jamie take over from there.
Okay, Jamie, whenever you're ready.
All right. So I'm going to be talking about Mobile Labs and Appium. And just kind of to expand a little bit on the previous question about real devices and emulators. We believe in testing real devices. We kind of talked about that. And then the reason why we came up with deviceConnect as a product is if you're going to test on real devices, you got to manage those devices and you have to have access to them. And that's why we created deviceConnect. So they are all in the device cloud. That's the only way to manage your devices. And then once you're in a device cloud, then you can do the automation. And we are firmly believers in automation. And the reason why we do that is just giving you an example that for mobile labs or for mobile application testing, automation really gets the ROI. For example, when you're doing your web application testing, let's just say you're going to test a login, right, for the different browsers. It's like Chrome, IE, Firefox, Safari. There's a few OS, Apple and Windows. So that's about, I don't know, 12 or 15 test cases. Well, for you to do a same login for your mobile applications across iOS devices, Android devices, all the OS levels, all the manufacturers, to get all of those, it's about 270,000 test cases just for login. Even if you back up and say, okay, I'm going to do the 80-20 rule. So it's only about 20% of the devices and OS levels I really care about. That's still about 500 test cases just for login. So that's why you really need to automate your mobile application testing. That's where you get all the benefit of the ROI for automation, and just because you have to go across all those different devices and OS levels. So UFT can help you with that. Also, there's Appium, and let's get into that. I can. So what is Appium? All right, so Appium is an open source testing framework that started back in 2012. Dan Qualler wanted to build an automation tool to test an iOS application, actually. And he thought, Apple provides a automation API, so why can't I leverage that? So he started working on that, built a product for that, and then he presented that in 2012 at the Selenium conference, where Jason saw his presentation and got up with him, and they started talking about it, and they decided that it'd be best to leverage the Selenium WebDriver technology along with the automation APIs that are provided by both Google and Apple. As a matter of fact, Appium is a concatenation of Selenium for apps. So that's where that was started. It is open source. As you can see, 1.0 was released in May of 2014. So it allows you to do native, hybrid, and mobile web apps. All right. So as we look across the industry, there are two primary players in the web testing industry. Is usually UFT or Selenium. So now, for each of those, you can leverage the trust for UFT to get into mobile testing, and then for Selenium, you just migrate that into the Appium framework. And the way that works, well, first off, let's talk about the Appium philosophy, because this is a little different from a testing framework than some of the others. And the very first one is that you shouldn't have to recompile your app or modify it in order to automate it. So a lot of the other frameworks that are out there, UFT with Trust, or the IBM solution, or the Ranorex solution, or the other testing frameworks require you to instrument the application. What that means is you include a library which allows those frameworks to actually see the objects and recognize the objects as objects. All right, well, the Appium philosophy is, well, I don't want to do that. So that was one of their core beliefs, that they don't do that. And then the next one is write your test script in whatever language you want. You can use Java, JavaScript, Ruby, C#, whatever you want. Write your test script in that language. And then the next one, and we kind of talked about this one, is let's leverage the automation APIs that are provided by Google and Apple. Let's not reinvent the wheel and come up with something different. And then the last one, just like Selenium, Appium is open source. You can go to the website, it's appium.io. There you can learn about everything about Appium. That's also where you would download all the software that you would use to write and run your Appium scripts. All right, so the architecture for Appium is a little different. Again, you leverage the Selenium WebDriver technology, but that doesn't actually talk to the automation APIs. So what they had to do was, as you see right there in the middle, is create a Appium server, intermediary, if you will. So the script talks to the server. You can see here the first step is the script sends a command to the Appium server. The Appium server then is connected to a device, so it sends that command to that device in the device-specific mechanism. The device responds back to the server, and then the Appium server responds back to the script so you can log the result in the console. For iOS, they're using UI automation API, and for Android, they're using the UI automator. So this is one of the few. Yes, Brian.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. There was a question that came up in reference to this slide. I could throw it out there now, or wait until you're done. You let me know. Good.
No, this is fine. Go ahead.
Does Mobile Labs require custom libraries to be included in the Appium script?
That's a great question. Actually, we do not. So we don't require you to put anything special in there. It's just, and then we'll see this when we actually get to the demo and look at the actual script. You do need to include some Appium libraries that are provided by Appium at the appium.io website, the client libraries, depending on what language you're using. But those are the only libraries that are required. Mobile Labs doesn't have anything that we need to require, or that you need to put into your script to work with the device and deviceConnect. So it's just straight native Appium. All right, so let's talk about the architecture, how this would look when you put this into practice. So my script that I'm building, no matter what language it is going to run on a desktop or laptop. That script is going to talk to the Appium server, and by default, the architecture for the Appium server is, and it does work with emulators, but for a real device, that device has to be tethered. So it's got to be directly connected to the Appium server via the USB cord for the device, and that's how the server communicates with the device over the USB. Now, that does present an issue for some organizations where they have a number of devices. How do they connect all those devices to the Appium server so that these tests will run? So you have a couple of choices. One is you can have a whole stack of Appium servers, and then you plug in your disparate devices into those Appium servers, and then you figure out which one you want to run, or you physically plug and unplug devices into the Appium server. Either of those options are both either time-consuming and or expensive. So what Mobile Labs came up with is a way to have the Appium server talk to a device where the Appium server thinks it's tethered, and that's with this product called deviceBridge. So this is a optional component of deviceConnect that you would install on the Appium server, and then you would connect to a device in deviceConnect. So the Appium server thinks the device is physically connected when actually it's remote. So from a process flow, the way this does work is on the Appium server, we're going to connect to a device using deviceBridge. And then, like Dean showed in his demo where you actually can see the device, we're going to bring that up so I can actually see what's happening on my device while I run my test script. We're going to start the Appium server, and then we're going to execute our test script. And that's going to be our demo. And then just as a screenshot, just so you can kind of see what you're about to see. This first one, the device bridge configuration, this is where you would connect to the deviceConnect, and then you select the devices that you want to connect to. Then our next step is going to bring up the device in a viewer, so I can see what's happening on it. This is the Appium server. This is the GUI version, and I'm going to launch that. That will connect the Appium server to the device, and then we'll actually lastly execute our script. All right, so let's get going with the demo. You can pass me, show my screen. Perfect, thank you. All right, so first off, I thought we'd just take a look at an Appium script. This is written in Java. Like I said, you can do Ruby, C#, whatever you want. Up here, this is where you import your libraries. This, as I highlighted earlier, you have the Appium Java client libraries that you need to import, and then the Selenium libraries. Those are just simply imported into your script. You have your desired capabilities. This is where you set platform name, version number, the device name, the application bundle ID. These are specific things for Appium that you specify. And then the main thing, and this is what's different between Selenium and Appium, is rather than doing a remote web driver object, you're actually creating an iOS driver object for iOS, obviously, and for Android to be an Android driver. But the important thing is, this is where the address of the Appium server is. So this is the advantage of having a client-server architecture. So you could have your offshore team be writing these scripts, actually designing these scripts, and then when they run them, as long as they could connect to this Appium server machine, be it here in the States or wherever, then it'll work correctly. So that's the advantage of the client-server architecture. You also specify a port number. And the reason why this is important is I can specify a different port number, which will allow me to run multiple scripts at the same time with Appium servers, and we'll show that here in a second. So anyway, this is talking to the Appium server, and then the actual script itself. If you're familiar with Selenium, it's the same kind of thing. You do find elements by name or by XPath, and then as you scroll down, you do your whatever testing you want to do. You do your grab a value here, like from an attribute, and then do your comparison to test it out. So that's the actual the test script. That test script is going to talk to this Appium server. This is the GUI version. So from here, under general settings, you see this is the IP address and the port number that this server is listening to. Then I specify under this apple that I'm going to use this application, this bundle ID, this device, and this UDID number. So the Appium server needs to connect to a specific device when it starts the session, and that's where you set that. So let's go to deviceConnect and see what device that is. That happens to be this iPod Touch. So when I click on deviceConnect, or on that device within deviceConnect, if you're unfamiliar with deviceConnect, this is our device cloud. Those are all of our devices in there. And when I do details, I see this is the vendor name, this is the UDID of the device, and that matches what was in the Appium server. So how do I connect to this device? And going back to our device bridge configuration, click on that. I connect to a server. Put in the IP address. Then you log into, these are credentials for deviceConnect that you use. This will present a list of available devices that are in deviceConnect that I can connect to. So I'll click on this iPod Touch, click Add. And then, as always happens when you plug in your Apple device, you can see here deviceConnect iPod 2, which is what we're connected to here. Button has gone red, saying that it's being retained. So we do support Android as well. And to show, since it doesn't pop up with iTunes, but there is an Android device monitor is always looking at what devices are connected to Android Studio. So if I connect a Android device, do that, pick this Nexus 7, you see here immediately pops up into the device monitor. So now my laptop thinks that these two devices are physically connected via USB cord. And just to further highlight how that works, let me come back over here, click on the devices, you can see these two devices are busy. So if I pull up Android Studio, just real quick, if I was to run this, this application, you pick Run, it shows that that is a connected device. So it's not just for Appium that we're connecting this device, it is for any framework that needs a tethered device, Xcode as well. So that way your developers can do their testing and debugging on real devices versus emulators. I mean, emulators do have their place in the world, but when you get into doing real testing, then you need to do on real devices. All right, so next thing is, if I want to see what's happening on my devices when I run my tests, I just hit this device control button, and that's going to connect to the device and bring it up in a viewer. Yeah, let's go ahead and click on, we'll get the iPod up, get my Nexus 7 up, click on the home button, and let me resize this a little bit so we can see it. Okay. So these are my two devices in deviceConnect that I want to run my test on. So this Appium server is connecting to the iPod, so I'm going to launch that. You can see here connecting to deviceConnect's iPod. Appium provides two types of servers. One is the GUI that we see here. The other one is a command line version. So here, Appium, you provide the serial number, in this case, of the device, and that's going to be our Nexus 7. So to run in concurrent test, we talked about the port number, so I have to specify a different port. So it's the same IP address, but it's a different port, and then it's a different results directory. As long as you specify that, as long as those two things are different, you can run these concurrently. So now both Appium servers are connected to those devices. Now we are ready and able to run our test. Let me just do a quick screen management here. I will kick off this test. And let me pop over here to Android test, which is pretty much the same thing. I'll kick that off. So you can see the GUI Appium server is connected to the iPod, which is running that script. And then the Appium server for the Android device is doing this logging to this console, and now it's running this test. So these can run. So that's how we set up an Appium test. Now these are, for example, this is a Java script, so you can save that out as an executable jar file, and then you can incorporate that into your DevOps operation, either executing those out of ALM. You can certainly do that because ALM supports executing tests UFT, so you can execute these, or if you're using like a Jenkins or some other process management software, you can do that as well. So that's how all that works. So you can see the Android one finished, and it did the price comparison, price was valid. So let me do, there's one last thing I'd like to show you, and then we will wrap up, and then we'll take your questions. So let me stop this server. And what I wanted to talk to you about was, sort of like with UFT and you have the object SPY, you know, how do I, if I'm not the developer, how do I know what values are these objects? Well, with the GUI version of the Appium server, and we'll launch another session here, you can utilize the inspector. What that allows me to do is this magnifying glass right here that will bring up the application on the device and allow me to basically not only spy on what these objects are and what their names are, but I can actually record my script there too. So once it pops up, here's the Appium inspector. All right. When I click on an object, I can see what the object name is, the text, and then the XPath value, right? And then when I want to hit record, here's the nice thing about this, the GUI version of the Appium server is I can pick what language I want to record in. So if I wanted to do this in Ruby, for example, I could just click on that and it changes it right to Ruby. And then I would just manipulate and work with my application. So for example here, I wanted to hit the send keys, and that'll send that value. You see back there on the device in the background where it actually sent those values, and then the inspector is capturing it, and then it is being recorded. So that's how we would grab those objects and work with them and start to build your Appium test script. So that's Appium in a nutshell. It is, like I said, we firmly believe mobile apps that you should automate everything you can. So we support all the different testing frameworks. Appium, we support UFT. So that is our philosophy, and we highly recommend leveraging Checkpoint technologies to help you with your testing services. So with that, Brian, I'm going to turn it back over to you. That sums up our Appium portion of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Jamie.
Certainly.
All right, fantastic. So we have just about 7 minutes left. So why don't we run a couple of questions, and we'll see how far we can get. And again, I would like to remind folks that any questions we don't get to during this part of the presentation, we will get answers for you, and we'll mail those out to all of the registrants. So we had someone ask, did you say that you can run a performance test using the same mobile automated functional script? And I think, Dean, that was during your UFT demo.
So yes, you can leverage, not just for the mobile environment, but any UFT script, you can actually leverage from LoadRunner. Again, it requires a particular, what is it? Yeah, you have to get a certain license for LoadRunner, a protocol, I'm sorry. It's a GUI test protocol for LoadRunner. You can call your test or actually load your test into LoadRunner, and it executes UFT just using the engine. UFT doesn't really open up. It runs in the background, and then it can capture all those metrics utilizing the start and end transactions that are in your script.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, we have another question. Why are we using so many wait one, is the 1 second wait there, in all over the script? Jamie, is that something you could speak to?
Well, that's something I'll take that load off of Jamie, because I developed the script, and it was just mostly because of a matter of time developing that script. So typically you'd want to use synchronization that's built into UFT that will synchronize on the property of an object becoming enabled or visible or whatever it happens to be before moving on. So that was just kind of a shortcut for me to put a quick demo together. This is not a best practices webinar, okay. So that was just for my time's sake. That's all.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Dean. So here's another question for us, and it looks like we have about 5 minutes left, maybe 4. So the Trust add-in is specifically designed for browser-based applications on mobile devices only. Would that be true?
So no, it's not true. Jim, you can speak. I'll let you speak to this. You're embedded in with the. Okay.
Yeah, the Mobile Labs Trust add-in is specifically built for native apps or hybrid apps. So yes, I mean you can cover all 3 types: native, hybrid, and web with the Trust add-in. So it's not just web.
Okay, great, fantastic.
Yeah, so the application I had up was not a web-based; it was a native app, and it was utilizing against web.
Excellent. Okay. Hey, just one quick point I would love to make before we have to wrap up. We have about 3 minutes. I do encourage everyone here to take the very short survey at the end of this webinar, letting us know how we did and whether you'd like to have us contact you in the next few days. We might have time for one more question, a quick one. Can we connect to our devices through Appium using a VPN?
All right, yeah, I'll take that since I was the Appium guy, and that's a great question, and the answer is yes. As a matter of fact, I was connected through our Mobile Labs VPN to get to our demonstration deviceConnect, so most heartily, yes, you can connect through a VPN for that.
All right, fantastic. It looks like we have about 1 minute left. Okay, so I'm going to throw one more question. This will be the last one. Is there a MOBI object reference guide for UFT? Do we know? Is there one of those?
In there's a Mobile Labs Trust Guide that comes with deviceConnect. It's just a PDF that outlines what all that is. So yes.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that just about hits it, and I think that we are out of time. Again, so on behalf of myself, Dean Carvin, and Jamie Moore, we hope you enjoyed our webinar and hope that you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.